I mean, the nice thing is like curiosity is good and bad, and I definitely experienced both of it. So too much curiosity leads to not being very focused. So because like, oh, look, there's something interesting. Let's go over there, and then I just keep the other stuff here.
Hey nerds, Monica here. Welcome to the Data Podcast for Nerds, where we get to talk to amazing professionals and ask them all about how they're using data to solve the world's problems. We're highlighting all of the interesting skills that data professionals use on a daily basis. And we always include some fun bits because we're all nerds here and we love to have fun. So today with us, we have Timo Dechau. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really good, and the music really helps, I have to say. It's really good. I really
Thank
feel
you.
like, I don't know, definitely better than before the music.
Absolutely. I know. It like gets your blood pumping, right? Gets you excited.
Yeah, I was really like, because I think I watched it, but I never really watched the part with the music. So I was not really sure what kind of music will come. So it's always like when someone says we do some music, it can be anything. I mean, it can be whatever you feel like. So, but no, it's good.
The fun thing about podcasting is there's something new that I'm always learning. My guests are always learning. My listeners are always learning. And this is just the start of season 2. So
Oh,
thank you for joining us.
oh, thank you for having me. Oh, that's great.
Absolutely. So, we usually start off our shows by understanding people's origin stories. So,
Mm.
if you could please let us know about your background and how you got to where you are today in your career.
Oh my God. So I'm definitely older, so I don't want to make it too long. So I had touch points with data, I would say early on. I always like it came really up when someone asked me, okay, what was your first data stuff that you did? And I really recognized, okay, when I was doing my apprenticeship, like the typical thing that you do is an apprenticeship, so you do stuff that no one else wants to do. And in let's say in one of the departments I was working, I think it was sales Germany. One of my tasks was like I got I don't know 20 lists or 20 pages of paper with numbers on it for sales numbers, and I had to put them in a spreadsheet because like this was then the report that was shared internally, and it didn't really work well because like I'm super bad in typing in numbers. So I make mistakes. I'm someone who's totally prone to make mistakes. And of course I make mistakes. People were not happy with me and so on. I was a little bit not so happy. And so of course, like, I mean, what did I do? First of all, I figured out is there a way not to get it as a paper. So I went down to the person who always gave me the stuff. So they were running this old SAP system. I was asking them, hey, can I get a text file of all this stuff? They give me a text file. I said, yeah, sure. No one asked for it before, but of course I can do it. It's also less work for me. I don't want to print the stuff out. So I got the file. I wrote a script. The script was basically building the spreadsheet automatically. I just had to press a button and nothing was happening anymore. So this was my first, let's say, data application that I built. I think was Visual Basic Script at that point of time, but I lost a little bit track in between. So to make it a little bit shorter, so I spent 9 years in product just because like I love building products, especially like digital products. So I started out there because I like the intersection between building something useful and on the other hand still have the technical impact. So I was usually working not true. I also had I had some time at Audible, which is still my favorite product in the world. Not Audible by itself, but the content is my favorite product in the world. So, but then afterwards, I did a lot of more, I would say, product positions for very technical products because like this was something which I always liked. And one part that always followed me on the product journey was to include data pretty early on, and to heavily build on that. So in different kind of ways. So when I was starting out, I was very young. I was in a very conservative company. I had management who basically ruled everything. And my backlog was basically built by them every Monday. So every Monday, I was basically called in a meeting. They were telling me, okay, you can do this, you can do that. And I was always thinking about, okay, what could be a good way to change that, to bring my stuff in there. And this is how I rediscovered data again, because like I rediscovered, okay, I can just track some data, I can run some tests, I can collect some data, I can just present it to them like, maybe not such a good idea to do something like this, maybe we should do something else. And it worked pretty well, obviously too scary well, because like there was immediately starting to believe, oh my God, he has some numbers, that's really good. And there I really felt the power that you can use in data to develop products. So it goes hand in hand. And this is also like the reason after, I think, 8 or 9 years in product, I made the switch to fully go to the data side. Because I was a little bit tired of doing product and I wanted to do something else. And so I basically went full-time data and also like full-time self-employed. So at the same time, both of it. Not sure if I would still recommend this to someone else, but it worked out so far. And this was then basically again like already 8 or 9 years where I basically went. So I started out in analytics. So this is like the part in data where I'm coming from. So product analytics, marketing analytics, and so on. But then ventured on into what we call today modern data stacks. So built like the first kind of setups there. Spent a lot of time then in data modeling, and then basically came back to the roots, I would say 2 years ago, because like I was just missing something when working on this big data stacks, and this is like the way how you work when you work in analytics. So which is like, so you work with event data, you're very close to shape products, very close to shape marketing initiatives. This was something that was missing, and so I went back to that and focused more on this kind of topic. And at that time, also started to produce a lot more content around it, because like I was not happy with the content that I saw, but also like because I had a very specific kind of idea what kind of content I need. I think this is more like it was more I need, because like I'm a very visual learner. So the best way if I can learn something is like when I see someone doing something, just looking over her or his shoulder, and he or she is explaining what she's doing. And this is the perfect way for me to learn. And this kind of content was missing for me in data. So there's some rare examples, but most of the time it was more like very simple examples, often skipping things and not the long version. So this is the kind of content that I started to produce on my own. And luckily I found some people who also thought, okay, it's a great idea to have this kind of stuff. And so it's shifting more and more to this kind of area to produce more content around, to build this, and to basically not to do so much consulting anymore. So quite optimistic for this year that even like maybe content by the end of the year will make the 100% of my time, but let's see. So by the end of last year, it was already about 60% content, 40% consulting. So
that's awesome. I know that you nerd out a lot on event data, so I want to like deep dive and like really nerd out on this.
Okay.
So can you tell us, like, first of all, what is event data exactly, and what do you do with it?
So event data in the end is like something that has a timestamp and a unique identifier. So you can find it everywhere in your data. So even like when you have a table, for example, with accounts, there's like a created at, which is like a timestamp. And so from there, for example, you can derive an account created event, because like this is interesting. So I think the interesting thing about event data is that when you even get more than just, let's say, account created, you get a whole sequence which is bound to one account, to one user, and so on. So in the end, you can see the whole lifetime, or this, let's say, the parts that you're interested in their user journey or customer journey. So you don't want to have all details, because this would be too much noise. but you want to have selected kind of things, because by that you can identify if, first of all, if they are on trajectory to be very happy users or very happy customers. Or you can see that they are developing new weird ways to use your product. This is often like also very interesting, so that you can then start to interview them. But you find the points where things are not really working out. And I think you see it because you can analyze the sequence. So I think the magic of event data is the sequence that you can analyze, because like you can stitch events together, usually under a user identifier, but you could also do it under a content ID. So if you want to understand lifetime of a content piece, or like a podcast is hard because podcasts cannot be tracked so easily. Or let's say like a video that you publish. So you could even like use this and then develop a whole sequence under it that's happening. So video is created, uploaded, published, viewed, liked, commented, and so on. And so you can really analyze the whole, let's say, journey of this kind of video over time. And this gives you interesting insights into things where you can then identify, oh, maybe we are losing too many people from here to there. And so, and a lot of optimization work when you work with event data, for example, in growth or in product, is always like finding these drop-off points where you basically lose people. And this is like, I always call it like, it's a kind of bit like going on a safari. So you never really know where you come out. So you go in a huge jungle, you have some ideas, you get to the first, let's say, first place that you still know. And from there, it's totally unknown. Because, for example, you can figure out that drop-off are actually not really drop-off. People do something different, which is still valuable, but you haven't identified it yet. And so it doesn't really appear in the data yet. And so it's also like then a point where you go away from the data and start to talk to people. Crazy concept, but it still works pretty well. And then you identify something totally new from them, and then you put it back into the data, and then like the picture becomes clearer. And I think this is maybe the point that got me hooked about event data, that I have this maybe not really fair comparison where I always say like BI is based on snapshot data. So you have a lot of snapshot. Every night you do a snapshot of a specific state. And then based on this state, you calculate some metrics and you put them in a dashboard. But it's basically like looking at pictures at a point of time. And events in comparison is like a movie, because like it's really like it's flowing through. So of course you have to have a good way to watch this movie, because like you really have to understand which frame of this is important. So it needs a little bit of training. But you always have the possibility to, let's say, go 20 seconds back and re-watch this again, and you have the full context. And I think this is the part which I like. So in BI, because it's a snapshot, either I have to enrich the data to get more insights. Sometimes not possible, because like it's historically, it's just there, and so you cannot really get it. And so with event data, you have more possibilities to branch out. And so I'm someone who totally likes explorative data analysis. And this is something which, if you have a good event data setup, you can spend weeks in there to find crazy stuff. And
Absolutely.
so I think this is like, this is my pitch for event data, I would say.
It's a great pitch. I have experience with event data as well, like types of anomaly detection. And then once you find some kind of weird spike, to your point, you go out and you start talking to people. Hey, what happened on this day? What happened during this time? To really investigate the analysis. So it's not like you have this data set and then you just analyze it and then present the numbers. No, you need to actually like put on your detective hat and figure out what's going on. And that's just like the most fascinating type of data sets that I like to work with.
Yeah, and it's called then, some people just call it behavioral data, and so like, which I think is definitely true. And this also makes it interesting because like it's how people behave. I mean, it's not 100% of people behave. Again, like we're reducing it, we make it a lot simpler because like we cannot capture everything that people think, luckily. So I hope we will never get there. So this is a totally different topic. But still, like you get a feeling for it. So one thing that I always did as a product manager is like, so I worked pretty early on with tools, which at that time was not called product analytics. So I worked with KISS metrics when it came out. It was pretty early on. I think it was 2008, 9, kind of. They were super early on, but they did things totally different than, for example, like Google Analytics did. Because like they were just based on events and they were based on sequences. And they had one report, which is called like, I don't know how they call it. Maybe they call it User Explorer or User Report. But it was really like, it went down granularly on one user account and you could see the whole sequence of events. And I spent at least 1 or 2 hours every week to just go to random kind of journeys. So I was filtering a little bit down just to get, let's say, a specific kind of subset of data. And then just looking at the sequence, how they did things. And it always triggered something. It always, where I think, okay, that's interesting. Why are they going here and here? So I could always pick ideas from there that I can then investigate, as said, like again, either talking to the people or collecting, let's say, a little bit more data around this kind of point to enrich it a little bit, or to combine it with mouse tracking so that you can see how people move in this kind of area. And then to really try to understand, why are these people doing this thing there? It doesn't really make sense, but it looks like a pattern, and it often was a pattern. And this is something that you can only do with event data, so that you really can dive so deep into something and understand. And the nice thing is, like, it's not only working for, let's say, humans or users, it also works for systems. So also, like, we did event data setups for systems, and there we did the same thing. I mean, in the end, like, these systems become so complex that, of course, like, they still run deterministic, but because, like, there are so many steps and so many things involved, you at some point cannot really, let's say, understand it with one glance, and then you have the same kind of thing. So if you then collect all the different kind of events, you can see, oh, look, this process actually starts before the other one actually ends. And so we have a problem here, because like these things should work in sequence, they don't. And so this is like, I think this is causing the problem. So it gives you a different kind of view on the things because of the time aspect, because I think of the sequence that you have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I was an auditor, we did a lot of these type of system audits as well, making sure that you have approvals and things happen in the right order and all of that for compliance purposes.
Yeah. And this is like, no, actually, this is really interesting. Yeah, I mean, this is perfect. Sometimes you can even then overlay these things. So like one thing, I can still remember where a time like where mobile apps were, I guess they are more robust today, at least like I claim now that they're more robust today, but there was a time where, let's say, mobile apps were crashing more often. And like for the first time, I think it was Crashlytics who did that, to basically overlay a crash situation with event data that has been collected before. This was a huge game changer, because before it was always like the developers only got the crash notification, like the error message. So like, okay, this is what's happening. Now they got the full stack, let's say the last 30 seconds before this kind of stuff was happening, which was a totally change to understand what basically led to this. Because like reproducing crashes was always like one of the worst things, especially like when you work on product. It was like everyone was frustrated. It was like, yeah, we have this 20 users who always crash in this kind of situation. No one can reproduce it here. No one. Because like we tried, we asked them for their system, we did the same things, it didn't really work. And with this kind of view to combine these both things, then actually you had this where you say, oh, they are doing this. I never really thought about it. And so like, yeah. And I think I like these moments. I always like these moments when you are like, that's the thing. And you really like look under this one stone and like, this is the explanation for it. And yeah, so this is something which you can get it from other data as well. But I think like from event data, I don't know, maybe it's also like because I started out with it. So just the reason why I stick to it.
True. And I think a big part of, if we're looking at like soft skills that help out in this type of situation in order to deep dive into why things are happening the way that they're happening, is curiosity.
All right.
Yeah.
I think curiosity is definitely something. I mean, the nice thing is like curiosity is good and bad, and I definitely experienced both of it. So too much curiosity leads to not being very focused. So because like, oh, look, there's something interesting. Let's go over there, and I just keep the other stuff here. And so
then 4 hours later, right?
Yeah, I mean, 4 hours later would be nice. Sometimes like 4 weeks later. It's like someone like, look, I asked you, we should do this. And so like, oh yeah, sorry, I lost track there because I found something more interesting there. And the other thing is like introducing new concepts or introducing new things. So so you're on the setup, you figure out, okay, we're really running against a lot of walls with the stuff that we have here. And so then also like the curiosity drives you to, okay, there must be a different solution. So we have to find something, and then you come up with something, and then you like, look, we are off to new places because like this is the new approach. We go there, and it can work out, and then everyone is super happy. And everyone's like, oh my God, he had the courage to go there. But it can also, you can figure out on the way, or actually it's much more difficult than we thought. And then you're on open waters, and but I still think curiosity is still the main driver, especially like when you talk to people in data. So I never really saw someone in data who sticked really long time there who is not curious. So I think this is still, I would say, the number one trait that you should have, because I think you cannot endure all the other pains that are along the way if you not have the curiosity. Because like, it's still frustrating how many small steps you're doing until you get there. But yeah, if you have the driving force, it's okay. Then you just do it. But
yeah, that's a really good point.
yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah. I know you touched on it a little bit during your origin story about how you like learning new things. You like sitting down with somebody, having kind of like a tutorial type thing. Can you kind of explore that a little bit more with us into how you learn new things?
I mean, in the end, like unfortunately, you always don't have this situation. So the ideal state is really like, it's not, I don't want to stand behind someone. I mean, of course, like ideal is like I sit together with someone and he or she's just showing how she's implements something. And so so pair programming, for example, is basically built for me. So it's a perfect kind of way. And I think it's not really like well applied in data, unfortunately, but it would be really nice. So I think this is still like the best way. So for example, I mean, when I know someone, and for example, I know someone who's like maintaining an open source package, and I'm get stuck at some point. Of course, like the ideal way is like these people have 30 minutes time and they just show me how to do it. And so this is still, I would say, the perfect way. But of course, like it's very time consuming on multiple ends. So the best case is like these people record how they do these things. So like, and they do it in a way that they explain a lot why they do it. So I mean, it's good to see someone implementing. It's definitely I think valuable for me. But the great thing is like when they really just talk about it. And so I would still say this is the best way to learn for me. At least like this is where I can develop most, I would say, the best speed to really get things going. If you let me read the documentation, I'm basically lost. So it's like, it's not because I make mistakes. It's the same thing, because like I read fast. I read top left, top right. I cannot read sentence by sentence. I usually always read top left, top right. And so I skip things because like often documentation have the important parts somewhere in between. So like you have to run this kind of command to enable this kind of permission. It's not working. And I was sitting before setups for 4 or 5 hours debugging it. In the end, finding out, okay, I just missed one part of the documentation that I should have done, and I haven't done. So as possible, if I can, I try. Of course, you cannot avoid documentation. You have to work a lot with that, but it's not my favorite part. I think in the middle, and this is always like, again, when I watch something or when something is showing me something, which is important for me, is like to get hands-on as quick as possible. And so to really then pick what I have and then immediately, I think this is my approach. I usually don't rebuild what people do. I usually try to already build the stuff that I want to build with that, which sometimes create a lot of frustration, or sometimes even ends up that I don't follow up with projects because like I run into something where it's not really going on. But I still find when I come through, I basically made such a big leap for me that it really brings me where I want to get. So, and it would be too boring to just rebuild what someone else was rebuilding. So because like I'm always like scratching this, like, no, I want to have it like this. And so I mean, this is like the nice thing. So when you can build these things, you can always like, oh, now actually this is nice, but I actually want to have it like this. I want to have this one a little bit like this, and so on, and testing things out. And I think this, of course, like when I look at something, learning something new, when I look at it, this makes in the end 80-90% of the whole learning experience. And this, trying to implement something and then again 6 hours debugging things because like it's not really working out. Then again coming up with something new, debugging again. Then maybe this time is a little bit shorter, and this vicious cycle where I'm always like the funny thing is like I'm always asking myself which is my favorite kind of part, and I can never really name it. So there are definitely days where I think, okay, no, let's say the architecture thing, when I think about, okay, I build it like this is the fun part. But then sometimes I even have days where I think, no, it's really great to just do debugging because I don't have to think about things. So I just know, okay, I already know where I want to go. Something is not working, so I just have to make one step closer to the thing, which in the end is quite, how to say, it's quite nice because like it has a very good feedback. It works or doesn't work. So it's really giving something like you run it and no, it doesn't work. Okay, figure out what is wrong, what is here wrong. Okay, works, doesn't work. Okay, works a little bit better. So let's say that's the next step. And I think I like the whole experience so much that I'm basically always have something new to learn where I'm trying something out and so on. So yeah, it's again focus problem. So then I have 6 things sitting next to each other, competing with each other. Hey, you wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, and so. But I mean, so far it worked out. I think I'm now in a point where I say, no, it's fine. I mean, it's like this is how my brain works. So it needs these input types, and when it's really important and really good to me, I usually also finish it up. So it's more like kind of a sorting mechanism that when I lose a little bit of interest, I think, okay, maybe it's for the good. But maybe it's just me telling me that to feel better.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, really good things that you can learn from, especially when you're working on projects. And projects that you want to work on are the best projects because that just keeps you focused and curious and answering all kinds of fun questions.
Yeah, no, this I think this is also like, I mean, as I said, I'm trying to not do so much consulting anymore. But one of the problems there is like you lose the touch to real world stuff that you have to figure out. So for me, then asking people like about, okay, do you have so many kind of things where you're really struggling out or really like figuring out new concepts and then implementing this, at least like at the moment, is super important for me to not just talk about things. So I still need this part to, play around, try this kind of concept, look, okay, when I put this concept in this kind of direction, how does it develop, and so on, to, I don't know, stay in the flow. So don't really lose touch. Because like I think one thing, I mean, I don't know where I will end up, but I don't want to become someone who's just talking about things and doesn't really have a feeling anymore how this stuff is actually really working and built. So I need this building experience. And I hope this will not go away, that at some point, because everything works out so fine, I'm just now doing this. Yeah, I can talk about everything in data, so no problem. And no, I don't want to, I hope I will not get there. So
Well, I think you're curious enough to keep your fascination with data going.
I guess so. Yeah, let's see. I mean, this is still. I still have the big question when the break point with data will happening, because like so far in my life, usually like I mean, at some point I was really into product, and at some point I totally lost the the happiness around that, and so it was really like I really had the feeling I had to do something different, and I'm still waiting for this point for data. And I would say the last year was the closest to it, where I was really like, oh no, I'm really sorry. I cannot really stand it. I mean, my approach was then to refocus again. So to not be so broad with the things that I look into and to pick more, let's say, specific things out there. And that definitely helped. But let's see. I mean, this is the point can still be around that I say, no, sorry, I don't really care about data anymore. I mean, it's often really like, I think when another topic comes around that in the end competes against the existing one and then at some point wins over. And I would say so far there was no new topic that won. I'm still waiting for it. Maybe I'm not even so. I was thought that AI might take this role. So I was doing some first implementations, some first ideas. But so far, I didn't really caught fire. So it's interesting. I still watch it curiously, but not so curiously that it basically starts to occupy specific parts of my brain that were before dedicated to data stuff. So,
yeah. I think that's a good recommendation for keeping things fresh, is just to be curious, of course, and refocus when things kind of start going bland. That's amazing.
yeah, I mean, in the end, like, it's not really like something that I do very, proactive. It's just like things how it's happening. So, so one thing, for example, which was really interesting was, and it more creeped in from the side, was like this producing videos and figuring out how to produce videos to, in the end, enable this, what I was always looking for. And it was side by side, but it was definitely something totally new. I mean, I never did this before. I didn't have any kind of experience, and I think still like I'm not there where I want to be. But it was definitely, it still is a very good learning experience to always, let's say, produce something, then look at it and think, yeah, it's, again, like debugging. So it's like, yeah, look, this part is definitely better, but here, maybe next time we should do it like this. And so it's the same thing. So I think, yeah, new things are definitely coming around. So when I compare how I do my stuff now and how I did it 3 or 5 years ago, it's definitely totally different. So sometimes I don't recognize that these things are changing so much.
They change so fast, it's hard to keep up.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, do you have any final recommendations for the listeners, or maybe words of encouragement?
I mean, we mentioned curiosity. I think I would still say if you go into data, you should have this curiosity. So you should have this inner urge to figure things out. If you have this urge, I think one recommendation is like to not always put it on the systems, but maybe put it to the people around you. So to really take this urge and make the leap and go to the marketing, to product, or whatever kind of teams and say, look, sit down. I want to learn how you do things. I want to learn where you're struggling. Because then you can put your urge into something that immediately makes you a very, likable person in your company. Maybe you're likable before, but you can help people a lot with that. So it's really like they cannot translate it because like they don't live in this data structures, and they try and they create these tickets, which we all are very frustrated of. Just because like this is the only way how they can translate their needs into what they think someone from the data side might understand. And then this is ways apart. And when you cross the bridge and you take the initiative, and I think this is something that data teams should do, and then don't put the urge in to solve something programmatically. I mean, the engineer's answer to a problem is like to build a new system that can solve the problem. But I would always like try to recommend, yeah, you can still do this, but maybe try to work on the human system, because like magically the human system sometimes works a lot faster and better than if you want to build another, I don't know, data contract or whatever kind of tool that can maybe solve part of the issue, but not everything. So my recommendation is like, keep the curiosity, but if your curiosity always goes into building or, I don't know, doing some system stuff, move it more out to curiosity about how other teams are working. I think this is still like the best thing that you can do. So
I agree. That's
3
huge.
weeks with them. If you are still in the office with everyone, sit 4 weeks in the same room as the marketing team. This will be eye-opening to see where they're struggling. You can help them immediately. You will see someone putting numbers every Monday morning in a spreadsheet and being not a happy person around that. You can come around and say like, look, I can help you with that. I can automate parts of it.
Yeah.
They bake you cake afterwards. I can promise.
Now that's the most key takeaway. That's how you get desserts.
Right. Yeah, no, it's definitely a possibility.
Well, thank you so very much, Timo, for coming on the show with us. If any of the listeners do have any questions for you, where can they find it or follow you?
I would still say the best way is on LinkedIn, because like at least this is my major platform where I do stuff. So always feel free to write me a message. Luckily, I don't get so many messages that I cannot answer them. So I usually try to answer them all. Sometimes it takes 1 or 2 weeks, but yeah, so no, always reach out, just write me a message. I'm happy to help and answer where I can help.
Amazing. Well, thank you again for coming on the show with us.
Thank you for the invitation. That was really nice.
Awesome. And as always, folks, happy learning.
Happy learning.